Hi, everybody. Jeff Krieger, Executive Director of Minnesota Association of Townships. Welcome to Township Tuesday. I just have a couple of announcements to make, and I'll hand it on over to whoever wants to go, either Lori or Graham. I believe Graham has something to talk about as well. Okay, Lori said that she is on the phone. So anyways, obviously, first thing we have talked about is district meetings went really well. I appreciate all of you who did show up to those. I enjoyed meeting everybody, all who I could. I did make 11 of the 13 meetings. 2 of them I couldn't because I had a previous meeting I had to get to out of state. And so I did miss, I believe, District 9 and District, can't remember which one Lyle's is, District 6, I believe. But anyways, but I appreciate everyone's attendance and attention to those meetings. Very important. A lot of good information was shared with those. Annual meeting will be October 14th and 15th. I hope you guys are signing up and going to go. We do have a lot of things that are going to be on tap for that. A lot of education. That's one thing that we've received emails pretty much every day asking for education and training, and we definitely do want to accommodate those townships who are looking for that. And not just that, but of course, Lori's going to be doing her Four Corners training and training here at the home office and so forth. So look forward to seeing you there at the annual conference. We did, let's see, should look at my wrong note. Encourage everybody to talk to your legislators. If you have not done so, please give them a call, send them an email, talk about those things that we're going to be discussing come next session. Obviously, the big 3 being broadband, transportation funding, annexation, that kind of thing. But just get to know them, and so that when they hear or see your name in the caller ID and coming over, they want to say, hey, how are things going? What can I do for you, or what's troubling you, that kind of thing. So please contact them. And also want to, one of the things we have received a couple of emails on is about a censure letter that was written inside the Insider on this latest edition. If you have not seen it, it's on page 6 under Gary's letter. There's a solid line, and then there's such a letter under that. One of the directors, because of behavior that was conducted by this particular director, they have since resigned as of August 11th. And but the board felt that it was still a need to write an essential letter to make it known what was all taking place and the trouble that was being caused by this particular director. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call or email and so forth. I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. And but unless there's anything else, I can pass it off to Steve. Or if you do have a question, you can unmute yourself too. Feel free. And if not, I don't hear anything. So Steve, go right ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Feels like it's been a long time, and I know it's on the calendar, so it's always the same. It's like saying it's a long day. It's the same day every day. So in the office, we've been continuing to with the I'm sorry, I got a message from Laura there. Continue to answer calls and questions. Keep those coming in. It's kind of no particular one thing going on right now. It's a smattering of different issues, and so that's probably a good news, good answer. Today we're going to have Graham talk about some issues that he had come up on the district meeting, some requests for information. So Graham, if you are ready, I'm going to have you take over.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We had a question came up at one of the district meetings. Can a fire department have bylaws? And I think that this one is a bit of a technical answer, but it's an interesting set of it's an interesting problem set. So what the heck? Figured I'd give it a go since I said I would. So all right. Bylaws are a term that I think is worth defining here, because some of this does depend on kind of the definition that you end up using. So the conventional definition is going to be something like rules or administrative procedures adopted by an organization for internal governments and external dealings, something that is below an article of incorporation type regulation, but above sort of your ordinary rule. They are subordinate in character to charters, to articles of incorporation, or something like that. Think of them as your statutes to a constitution. That's sort of the relationship that they conventionally have. Under Minnesota law, these things are allowed to contain any provision relating to the management or regulation of the affairs of a corporation, consistent with the law or the articles, and the stuff that is specifically spelled out. There's stuff like number of directors, qualifications for directors, the qualifications for members of the association, manner of admission, appointment authority, committees, stuff of that nature, establishing a quorum for making decisions. Now, that list comes from Minnesota Statute 317.181, which is specific to nonprofit corporations, but it's pretty on point with the provision for for-profit corporations. Basically, the point is that we're talking, or these things are fundamentally a creature of corporate law in conventional terms. You only get a bylaw if you're some sort of corporation. Now here, it's worth remembering that townships are creatures of limited and more or less explicitly delegated powers. Obviously, implicit powers exist because the legislature has chosen to provide us with statutes that sort of can't be executed without extra powers in certain circumstances, but we're going to leave that to one side for a minute because it's its own can of worms that's probably not worth getting into this morning. So why does that matter? Well, in about 2000, Minnesota Statute 465.717 was passed, which limits the authority of public entities to form corporations to certain specific circumstances. There has to be an explicit statutory or authorization, or there has to be grandfathering in of certain already existing entities. The concern seems to have been about making sure that public entities weren't using its formation powers as an end run around stuff like the open meeting law, stuff like municipal contracting law, stuff like public employee compensation statutes. But there are some caveats that come with this, with respect particularly to the fire departments, or in police departments too, for that matter. This law doesn't stop you from making something like a Friends of the Police Department or a Friends of the Fire Department type organization to solicit and pass along donations for public entities. Now, Minnesota Statute 465.719 subdivision 1 explicitly allows a nonprofit corporation to raise funds for a political subdivision if less than a majority of the directors are officers of the governing body of the political subdivision appointed to the board of directors only by virtue of election to their office. So the legislature has chosen to slice this particular onion very thin. You can even, I would say under that statute, everyone on your board could be a member of the board of the Friends of the Fire Department nonprofit. It's just that they can't get that position only because of their election under 719 subdivision 1 in parens B and parens 2. So it also doesn't prevent you from doing with an employee handbook basically anything that you would have done with bylaws. You can still create these regulations. They just have to be regulations for a municipal fire department, not bylaws. Now, those of you who know Chapter 365 particularly well may object, hey, wait a minute, bylaws are mentioned with respect to townships twice. Now, specifically, 365.10 subdivision 3 says that the electors are allowed to make bylaws, and they use the term bylaws specifically, quote, on restraining horses, cattle, sheep, swine, and other domestic animals from going at large on the roads. They make bylaws impounding domestic animals for going at large and fixing penalties for the violation of said bylaws. And also 365.11 says that bylaws are only effective if posted or properly noticed. And so how can it be true that towns can't make bylaws? Now, we take the view, or well, I take the view, that this usage in chapter 365, or these two usages, are essentially an archaicism left over from earlier forms of law. Now, we talked definitions in the beginning of this presentation, and I was specific there about the conventional definition because of this. So if you want to get deep into the weeds and check the etymology, as I have done, this word comes from Old Norse beer, or Danish by, probably, meaning town. So it's originally, it was a town law. It was what it meant was an ordinance. But sometime in the 19th century, corporate law kind of took this on to, as we were talking about earlier, mean regulations that exist in this in between ordinary rules and the Articles of Incorporation. And that usage sort of exploded, particularly within the profession, and it's gotten to the point now, if you run a check for every mention of the term, quote, bylaw, unquote, in Minnesota statutes today, you're going to find about 578 of them. And the two that remain outside of the context of corporate law are these ones. So we take the view that this is just a leftover archaicism, and what they're actually talking about is an ordinance there. But technically, if you put a gun to my head and made me give you an opinion on the subject, I would say you can call your ordinances bylaws, at least with respect to animals running around. But other than that, we're talking about something that is a creature of corporate law. And so with respect to our original question here, can we use these things for a fire department? I would say that we cannot. So yeah, that's more or less the situation. Now, obviously, like I said, there are plenty of ways to get the same thing done, depending on what it is that you want to do. Sometimes it just requires a little bit of stretching and a little bit of, bending over, but such is, or hoop jumping is maybe the better way to phrase that. But that is the nature of law in all of its glory. So, all right, does anybody have any questions about this? Reno, I think I see a hand over there.
Yes, Graham, thank you so very much for taking the time to go through that. That was a question that came up during my district meeting. And so I would ask if anybody has a fire department for their township, do you have any rules or policies or procedures that you've established for them? And if you have, can you email that to me? I would really appreciate it. Thanks again, Graham.
Thanks, Reno.
All right. Pat mentioned her appreciation for Graham. Graham, I don't know if you saw that in the chat, but all right. So I see no more questions on this one. Lori is done with her. She was on a call, so she was on a call when we started. Lori, did you have anything you wanted to talk about today?
No, not really. I did just want to touch base, and I don't know if either Graham or Steve can address this, because conflict of interest with board members has been a question that's been coming up a lot in the last few weeks due to elections. And I'm also getting questions about town supervisors. This one particular town, their grader operator quit, and the supervisor is doing the grading until they can find someone, and how that involves conflict of interest and what they need to do. Another thing I've been getting is election judge pay and the difference between an officer and just an election judge. And I just want everybody to know that that information is on our website in the information library as far as paying, but you can always reach out to one of the trainers, one of the 6 of us. It's nice to have 6, because we can, if we don't know the answer, then we can, between the 6 of us, we'll figure it out. We have also, between Alex Pendergast and I, we got together last week and picked out some dates for on the road training. We're looking at October 31st that week up in northern Minnesota. We're looking at 2 days in the MAT office on the 14th and 15th. Then we need to take a week break because the board will be in the office. And then down in southern Minnesota, we're looking at the 28th of November through December 1st. Alex is getting those venues together for us, and hopefully by next Monday, we can get it on our website and we can get a letter out to everybody. We're also looking at looking forward into the next year, March, the 6th through the 9th. We're looking at having training in the MAT office, and that's going to be by appointment. We're going to help those townships that need help filing their financial statement that is due the end of March. And that's going to be right before spring shore courses. Hopefully we'll be in person for that again. And then we're looking at April having 4 different dates of new clerk training and treasurer training. And also the same in May, but going out state for that new clerk and treasurer training. So that's what we've gotten together so far through May. Again, those dates and those locations will be posted on our website when we get things finalized. 14th and 15th of October is the annual meeting. We're looking at the 14th and 15th of November being in the MAT office. Yeah. So don't come to the MAT office on the 14th and 15th. Join us in St. Cloud, please. That would be best. Other than that, you know, like I said, having those trainers. I know Petra and Nicole are on right now. It's just nice to be able to have 6 different minds and put them together and get some of these questions answered, because, you know, I like to think I know it all, but I really don't know it all, but I'm good at pretending at knowing it all. But now I have other people that will tell me I don't know it all. But anyway, that's what we have. That training coming up the end of October and through November is going to be 1 hour of board appeals and equalizations for supervisors that need that certification. And it's only going to be a half-day training. So from 9 to 12, we're going to go through year-end procedures for clerks and treasurers and what needs to be done. We thought that November is probably a better time to do it than January, so you can get ready for that. Other than that, apologize for my appearance. I'm getting the security system put in at home, and I didn't have time to do anything with this. So if you have any questions, please give us a call. Please give us a call. We're here for you to answer your questions. Clerks and treasurers, supervisors, just believe you're not out there alone, and we will help you as much as we can. That's what I got.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Lori mentioned the conflict of interest thing. So is it conflict of interest related to family members being on the board? Is that what you mean by?
No, it's conflict of interest in doing things outside their supervisor job.
Oh, okay.
Where you could hire somebody else to do it.
Okay. So that's a statutory conflict of interest. There are 2 types. There's common law conflict of interest, which is there's no contract. It's just there's some money interest in the outcome of a vote on the board. And when a person is going to do labor or some kind of job for the town board, we're generally not talking about that kind. I guess it could fall into that, but we have a more direct route to consider, which is the statutory conflict of interest. And we have a good resource on this, and it's the one people probably get tired of hearing, C6000, about statutory conflicts of interest. It describes that there is a statutory conflict of interest if a person has a financial interest in a contract with the township. So that could be they're going to get money, or they could potentially lose money somehow. And these are right in statute, right in law, 471.85 or 87, I want to say. And then there's a couple statutes in there after it that talk about it. But the idea is if you're a town board member of any sort, supervisor, clerk, or treasurer, you cannot have a contract with your township to earn money unless we can clear the conflict of interest. So it's possible to fix them so that it works, and it's pretty common. I think you all know that. So let's take the example of somebody doing, they're going to operate the grader or the plow, or they're just going to do labor on the township. Well, if they're not going to do it for pay, we don't have a financial interest, right? So there's no conflict of interest. You can donate your time all you want. But as soon as somebody's interested in being paid, now we have a situation where it's potentially a contract. Even though I know they don't make a contract, they don't sign, here's your agreement to do our grading work, but there's still an agreement, right? A contract doesn't have to be written. There's an agreement that they will do work and you will pay them. That's a contract. Okay, so we take a cautious view of something like this and we say, okay, we have a statutory conflict of interest. Can this one be allowed? And what the statute says is a town board member can have a conflict waived if it's not a contract in which sealed bidding is required. Okay, so sealed bidding is required only if the contract is $175,000 or more in value. Then the township has to use a sealed bidding process. So if it's a job as the general contractor to put up the town building and one of the supervisors happens to be a general contractor, well, if we're over that 175,000, there's no way for that contractor to get that contract. Okay, for that supervisor to get the contract. It is strictly prohibited. And this one's a crime. I think it's a gross misdemeanor, I believe, in the statute. But let's say he's the electrician and he's going to do a piece of the job. Well, if it's a $20,000 job, yeah, he could potentially get that contract. And what he would do is express his interest to the board, and the other supervisors could consider this, and they would be able to discuss it without the interested supervisor participating. He could be part of the public in that sense. And they discuss it, and then they decide, well, are we going to allow this conflict of interest? Because the statute says you could, but it has to be unanimous. So if you have a 3 supervisor board and one is interested, one steps off, you have to have the agreement of the other 2. So sometimes we get a situation where somebody's able to do it, but one of the other supervisors just will not allow that person to do the job. You know, unfortunately, even though the town may save money, they cannot get that person to do it for payment. If you have a 5 supervisor board, well, now you need the agreement of your 4 remaining people. Okay, so that's the first document you need, and that is in C6000. Okay, that document on our webpage. So it's a resolution to allow a conflict of interest. And I look at this broadly. It can be the plowing, the grader operation. You're going to shovel the walkway and you're going to claim it as part of your time. Well, all of that is extra work for extra pay. Again, if you're getting paid, because you're not elected to do any of that. You know, you consider a county commissioner or a city council member. On some small cities, they may do the work too, but generally, no, there's a staff, and the board members, they don't go do staff work. Okay, towns are different. So it's possible in that situation. The board clears it, and then the person can get the contract, do the work, and then eventually they make their claim for payment. Well, the other piece of this is when they make their claim for payment, they submit an affidavit saying there is a conflict of interest here, but it was recognized and I'm doing it for a fair price. The board knew about this and it cleared it. And that is also in document C6000. Okay. There are other conflicts of interest that come up, and there's a list of, I don't know, maybe 15, 16 of them in 471.88 or 89, roundabout there. And one of them is even it's a different situation. It's where, well, you have a supervisor who isn't going to do the work himself or herself, but that person is the employee of the party who's going to get the contract. Well, that's a conflict of interest potentially too, even though they're not getting the money. So there's a procedure for that as well. It'd be worth looking through sometime. Some of them aren't going to apply at all, but others like that one will apply to some folks. And we do get that question now and then. Lori, does that answer the question that was posed?
I do believe so. Another, when I was talking to this gal this morning, her other one was, what about storm damage, the trees down in the middle of the road? They can't get a hold of their employee to get it, and the supervisor goes out and gets that tree off the road. What about that?
So in that case, if they hadn't done anything already and somebody goes and does the work, it's an emergency situation, it's okay. There is an allowance in the statute for an emergency, but we don't want to play with the idea, well, it was an emergency. So if it's really an emergency like that, trees down, you can't get somebody to come out, make the road safe, somebody go out and do it. The board can, after the fact, approve the conflict and pay the wage. Okay, but a better approach, the prospective approach, is at the reorganization meeting every year, every supervisor, clerk, and treasurer gets this resolution done for them. Okay, again, it covers clerks and treasurers because of the way the statute's written. So you get a generic form, and you have to do them one at a time, which is a little annoying, but it shouldn't take very long. And the form says there's a conflict of interest. We recognize it, but it's allowed under the statute. It's not a job for which bids are required. Describe the work. And we say, make it generic. Perform manual labor as needed, operating duties as needed, which means equipment, right? Plow and grader. Election judge duties. Folks, you are not elected to be an election judge. So that's extra work for extra pay. You're going to do that. That's a conflict you have to waive. Okay. That generic form that you do at the reorg meeting or any other time. Okay. You don't have to wait, but that's when we recommend it. Include that and anything else you may do. Right now, if you're going to go back to the guy's the electrician, the plumber, he is a general contractor, do that as a separate agreement that a person may have more than one. Okay. And remember, it's got to be connected to a term of the contract. How long is that contract? Okay. We should have some sense of that. And we recommend these be done every year on the generic one for each board member. Okay. That doesn't say that in law, but I think at a certain point, you go say, Judge, look, there's a complaint, but I had this done. Yeah, it was 10 years ago. Well, you've been elected a few times since then. So maybe we should presume that you had to do it more often than that. That's the safe approach. Okay. And again, C6000 in the library, we tried to do the work for everybody. So it's pretty much as easy as we can try to make it for you. There's comments thanking Nicole in the chat. Thank you, Nicole. Any other questions that we have today? Reno has one.
Steve, one of the questions that I had too was if anybody here has a cemetery and they have rules or policies for it. I've had some townships asking about that. If you could just email those to me, I would greatly appreciate that. And of course, my email is on the MAT website there. And I know, Steve, you've spent a lot of time, and I know Carl did too, going over cemeteries and the requirements for townships and that. Mm-hmm. And, so I understand that, but these folks just wanted to know, did the township have any policies themselves, not bylaws, but policies as to how they handled stuff or what they did? So thank you.
Yeah, and MAT, our office does not have those policies. So again, those policies, forward them on. Sounds like folks are interested in getting them. Anything else? Doesn't look like it. Okay. So that's all I got. Jeff, anything else you have today?
I got nothing. I appreciate everyone coming today. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the office. We'd love to answer them for you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks again.
Take care.